You got that. Hello, folks. Our program does not officially start for another 2 minutes, so says the clock. But as I said to our audience prior to episodes, that we're going to do kind of our background work to let you know that we're not born into this. We work into it to get better at this podcast stuff. I'm sure as I get better, I'll use better terminology, but right now it's still podcast stuff to me, and I think to Tommy also. So when I say background information, some things that we're discovering. Somebody had asked me our first call. This is our third one. And by the way, Tommy, I think I asked you, I'm going to show this at the bottom deliberately. So for people who would like to come back to this later or get on late, if you put this title that scans across the bottom into YouTube as a search criteria, I would say the first 4 or 5 words, you don't need the whole thing coming up. It will pull you up not only to the current, most recent podcast, but also to the ones preceding. Somebody did ask me, how do they make comments? Well, I've discovered in Facebook and in YouTube and in LinkedIn, there will be a comment section. So feel free to put that in there, your thoughts, your opinions, your suggestions. And also, as I said before, we may not get to everyone at this point, and there is at least a 15 to 20 second delay. But if we can't answer you as of last talk Monday, we'll answer you this talk Monday is a prioritized list, you might say. So tell me, how have you been?
I'm real good. I'm excited. I did a bunch of comedy and magic shows over the weekend. It was a social distance outdoors, right. And it was good. Little by little, I'm getting back on stage in public events. Now, once the weather change again, I'm not so sure. But right now I'm enjoying it because I'm getting to do what I love, be on stage. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, anyway, and again, that's my challenge to you that, well, you love it, therefore you're good at it. But for those of us who don't love it, we got to work through it. So I'm not letting you slide by any comment whatsoever.
Boom. Right hand.
That being said, we are live, and one of the comments shared with us on the last talk, we didn't have time to get to it, is one lady, Patrice, brought up a point I really hadn't thought about when I say hadn't concerned myself with. And our talk last week was about stage fright, being in front of people, either back in the day when we had real audience connection, or even on Zoom Connects, people still seem to experience stage fright. But what Patrice said was, well, her worst scenario is not in front of other people in a Zoom Connect. It's when she's doing a podcast and she's all by herself. And that's when it most impacts her. So I'm wondering, Tommy, do you find that happens often? Do you have an explanation for it? Is there some kind of aid? I know this is your business, so we're not asking you to give away the kitchen sink, but maybe some prelude of how people might respond to that concept, because it's novel to me, certainly. And thank you, Patrice, for sharing that thought with us.
So let me see if I get this straight. Are you saying, like, when you're doing this by yourself, you're just doing a presentation and you're recording it? Or are you broadcasting it? That's right.
I think she said live stream. So it's not like you have 13 people on the screen with you. You're by yourself. To me, let's say it differently. To me, it's like a radio talk show Sunday morning at 2 o'clock. Who's listening? Right. So I don't see the anxiety in it, but she says for her, that's her chief anxiety in her presenting.
I'll give it to you in a 2-part answer. Okay. Number one, no matter what you're doing, anxiety a lot when it comes to presenting or public speaking, no matter where it is, if you're going on a radio show or you're going to get a video recorded, the anxiety comes from not preparing enough. I truly believe that. Prepared people have less anxiety. Now, what I mean by that, it's not you're not anxiety free, but you know you're prepared, you know what you're going to say, you know what you're going to do, you've timed it out already. If you're going to do 5 minutes, when you were home practicing, it was done in 5 minutes. If you were going to do 7 minutes, you practice, it was done in 7 minutes. So you go in with a mindset that you're prepared. It really gets your heart to pound a little less. I think a lot of anxiety comes from people who wing it. And I always say, never, wings are for the Super Bowl, not for doing a presentation. So keep that in mind. And part two is, second part of that is plain and simple. Sometimes when we're doing this and we can't see our audience, we can't get a feel for the energy or the emotion that goes into it, we need to use our imagination. And by that I mean is many, many times I used to practice my presentations like there was an audience when there wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But when the time I got to the audience, I had already been through it, that I was already envisioned this. So the same thing goes if you're doing a Zoom call or a presentation or a virtual presentation. Make believe that you're chatting to the biggest audience in the world. Just make believe. Use your imagination. Let it go free. Act like you're talking to people. So looking at you saying, so Joe, what's going on today? Good morning.
Mm-hmm.
And actually play it up bigger than life that you were talking to someone in an audience. I truly think that'll free you up. But imagination comes into play big time now with this. Make believe.
I hear that. And I think actually just brought up a point that occurred to me as I was listening, that part of perhaps what she's saying is that you make a comment, you can look at somebody in the audience on the screen and say, hey, or live, hey, Bob, how are you doing? Hey, Tommy, how are you? Thanks for being here. But if she's by herself, she doesn't have that feedback option.
Right.
And she's like talking into a vacuum. So I could see perhaps where that could be a novel, as I see, novel challenge for her. Whereas Zoom, she might be more comfortable with faces to look at that might be familiar to her. So is there, and I'm not sure if preparation helps that, because your example was do it by yourself initially and practice, but she's by herself and that's where her highest anxiety is. And she feels better actually when she's in front of other people. Am I talking in circles on this? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Well, you know what? We're getting used to you talking in circles. It's fine. It's all good.
I didn't put myself up for that one. Thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome. It's Monday morning, man. Face it. No, I think the first part about being prepared for every presentation goes for every presentation of removing anxiety. But the second part of not having an audience, again, that was where I put part B in, is use your imagination, make believe there's an audience, make believe you're talking to someone, make believe you see a smiling face out there, even if you're doing the presentation now. If you weren't here right now and I couldn't see you, I would just be talking right now to the computer, just like I am, without looking at you. If I covered up over here, I would still have to have my energy up, my tone up, my passion for what I'm talking about up. So it really comes down to you creating, and maybe this is part B.5. Creating a character that comes to the game, the character that shows up. Maybe it's not you in your house. Maybe you're a little shy, but you can create that person who comes and to the presentation. Because I always talk about that. What's your character on stage? When I step on stage, I become somebody completely different. Yes, it's based on Tommy Hilcken, but I become bigger than life because that's what I need to do. And most people need to do that on Zoom as well, become bigger than life. And next week we'll talk about this because we only do a few minutes each day, but I want to bring this up. It comes down to how do you become compelling and memorable in every presentation. And, you could counterpunch with me. Is it that important to be compelling and memorable? But that's something we're going to bring to the show next week, that I really feel that we should be talking about that, why we do presentations in the first place.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And actually you talked about somebody building, what was that? Not caring, the adjective of the noun you used. Let me ask you this differently. As a speech coach, you wear actually at least two hats, the motivational speaker and a speech coach. And I think they are different, but yet they complement each other. Is part of your job description or your profession to help people discover? Is it more focused on technique and also discovery? I look at it from two different angles that we can talk about, make the presentation appropriate and practice and rehearse, but you also help them discover where they are with themselves to move that forward. Yeah.
You know what? I like to look at it as, we focus on your strengths and we manage your weaknesses. So we don't focus on your weaknesses. We manage those. We recognize them. We see that they're there. They're kind of a part of you. But we want to really just build up your strengths. What are you good at? So discovery is a great way to look at it. Most people, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10 as a public speaker, as a presenter? And I do believe that many people, because they got thrust into this now, in March, we got thrust into doing Zoom calls.
Yeah.
I truly believe more people are going to benefit from this because they're naturally building better presentation skills because they had to. See, there's a difference between wanting to and having to. And I really see that a lot of people are doing it because they had to. They had no options, right?
Right.
So when you run out of options, what do? You do what you got to do. And I've noticed that. So many people, just by the idea of doing it, and my favorite phrase when it comes to public speaking, the learning is in the doing. So many people were forced to learn how to do this.
Right.
And it's going to benefit them at the end when they break through at the end, whenever this ending comes, but they will certainly be better at presenting without even knowing it.
Interesting. Now, I tell the audience, for those who are new to us, that we don't rehearse this. We are learning it by the seat of our pants.
Is it obvious?
Yes, it is still to be, certainly. And we're doing it to give a message, because there are people who say you have to be born to be a speaker. And Tommy says, nope, that's not true. We are all capable of doing it. So neither of us are born at podcasting. I didn't start doing this until 3 months ago. I began looking at it, and then I spent my first whole month trying to decide which of these 5 categories should I go with. So this is our third one, learning by the seat of our pants. And I suspect strongly, for those of you who choose to stay with us, someday you'll look back in 4 months from now, I hope not 4 years, and say, geez, these guys were born to do this. And Tommy claims that public speaking confidence follows the same path. Now, follow up on the point you just made, Tommy. One of the comments you make frequently when I hear you is that people have to make up their mind to, as you say, just do it. And I'm not sure if it's intuitive why people should bother with it. Why isn't it okay to sit in the back of the room and dip your head into your smartphone and read your email? What advantages, if any, does it provide you, your company, to be in the front of the room speaking?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next week. The idea of what it does for you. And, being that we only have a couple minutes left, I don't want to bring too much of what we're going to discuss next week.
But give us a teaser then, if you would.
Well, here's the teaser. I want you to think of one of the things that brought me much success. The mindset I created for myself. Don't know where it came from. Maybe it was a gift. I don't know. But I always consider myself a walking, talking infomercial. Mm-hmm. I'm in business for myself. People need to know who I am and know what I do. If people don't know who I am and what I do, I'm in trouble, because I need people to help me do business.
Right.
So that's why I say, if you can stand up, and get out there and let people see you and become your very own infomercial, people will start to know a little bit about you and know what you do. They can help you do more of it.
That makes sense. And a lot of the chatter that I hear, because I do a lot of talking with people who are business owners, that there's an underlying, and many of them are business leaders in terms of marketing and social media presentation. And they say many of their associates are confused. They have high anxiety, and they're really looking for someone that can come across with some degree of confidence, some degree of certainty and assuredness about how they present themselves.
Right.
Because quite frankly, on a personal level, whatever concerns and anxieties I have about my business and its survival and its success, if I'm listening to somebody who sounds more uncertain than I am, you're not likely to get my money. Is that kind of the message you're giving out there?
Yeah, well, it's the message. You might like the person. They might be a nice person, all that kind of stuff. But you want people to be confident in who they are and what they do. Right? We buy confidence. We buy into confidence. That's the idea, is that you're not worried, did this guy just start yesterday? And why should I do business with him? People who are compelling and memorable will always be able to draw people into them. And if you're, a business owner, you need people to come to you.
Right. And I think it reflects also, at least from my perspective, that person seemingly has provided some thought, some diligence, some homework into presenting their program, so they can feel very comfortable about how they do it. And if that's what makes sense, I'm not teaching the teacher here, but I'm sharing with you my thoughts and counter.
Fantastic.
Okay. So we've got another 30 seconds. Anything you want to take home with in terms of what one should memorize, can't get the word out, to go home with in the next 40 seconds? What do you think someone should think about?
I have a thought about today, how you keep talking about the fact that, we started this from scratch. And we kept saying, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? And then we put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, between you and I, into our third session, I can see the comfortability building. So ladies and gentlemen out there in whatever world you're at, keep doing it. The comfortability comes from doing, and we're getting more comfortable with this. Never did it before in our lives, but
True.
We put a date on the calendar. We gave it a deadline. We started. And I can see already that we're starting to improve, which is great. And congratulations to you, Joe. Great job.
Mark, you make my world easy. I thank you for that, Tommy. I'm going to link off for those. Put your comments in if you haven't already done it. We will review them after the session, and we're going to end this broadcast now.